Monday, so you know what that means. And obviously, it's an exciting Monday if you are a Michigan fan because Michigan is 3-0. I know some people predicted that they'd be 3-0. Others weren't so confident about Washington. I know things have changed. Michigan's 3-0. They handled business. They weren't overconfident. Wasn't a recount of 2013 when Akron ended up posing a problem for the Wolverines. And obviously, we're here to talk about it with the Mackey Award-winning tight end, Jake Butt. Jake, so glad to have you and discuss what happened in this 63-10 win for Michigan over Northern Illinois.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Isaiah. I mean, 3 weeks in a row, 3-0, of course. It's Victory Monday. And here's the thing is 3-0 can tell a bunch of different stories, you know, and you can only figure that out in what team you are by studying the film and watching the team play and execute. But I think, you know, myself, most Michigan fans are going to be really excited and happy about the 3-0 that Michigan's currently put out on their record.
Yeah, it's very, very little issue. And that's where when people look at the fact that the advanced analytics are so high on Michigan, Bill Connolly from ESPN does SP Plus, which is more of a predictive model, said that if you took out all the preseason rankings, Michigan would be the top team in the country. You look at some of the advanced analytics that go less predictive and more what really happened. Pro Football Focus is really high on Michigan in pretty much every category. Nothing's really looking bad, right? The offense clicking, defense clicking, special teams clicking. You can go to WolverinesWire and see where that all breaks down. But that's the thing that I think why I think Michigan fans should be excited, right? Because this is a situation, and we saw this on Saturday, where it's not that the team's just getting by these opponents, they're bludgeoning them. So what are you seeing from this Wolverines team that makes you confident that this can be sustained moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing everything that I would want to see. And again, you as a football team, you can't control who you play. You know, it's just your job to go out there and perform to the best of your abilities each Saturday, no matter the opponent. So what I'm really excited about is it just feels like a veteran team. And we talked about it in our preseason games or our preseason shows about, you know, Michigan really needed to enter this season feeling disrespected, feeling like they needed to go out there and make a statement because we really haven't performed to our ability and to our standard the past couple of years. So you can kind of see that this team on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, special teams, you know, looked even a little bit better last week. Guys kind of have a bad taste in their mouth, and they do feel disrespected, and they want to go out there and punish the opponents. You know, usually everyone wants a piece of Michigan because of the way we carry ourselves, of the leaders in the best and the Harvard of the Midwest. And of course, we're a good academic school, but a historic football school, the winningest program, you know, in college football history. So teams want a piece of us. We're going to get their best shots. So for us to go out there and dominate again this week in week 3, that shows that this team kind of understands what needs to be done and execute week in, week out. So great win for the guys. I'm super excited for them, and they definitely handled business last Saturday.
And that to that point, you actually mentioned about the idea that these guys feel like they haven't achieved anything, essentially. And that's exactly that underdog status. That's what they talked about today. Mike Morris said, we know that if we lose a game, then everyone's going to say Michigan sucks, right? There's certainly trepidation amongst the fan base, this idea that, maybe this is fool's gold because it's 2 MAC opponents, Washington. We'll see how some of these teams end up doing down the stretch, right? NIU is already the team that Michigan just destroyed, beat Georgia Tech in week 1. Not that Georgia Tech's any good, but Georgia Tech should still beat a group of 5 team, right? And Washington finally got it, on the winning board by beating Arkansas State. Western Michigan beat Pitt. Maybe these teams are good. Not elite, of course, but maybe these teams are good. And like you said, you can only control so much, and who you play is not something that you can control. Looking at this game again, particularly, we saw the run game continue to do the same things it's done the first 2 weeks. With that in mind, I said on the morning drip this morning about how, one game that's interesting. 2 games is the start of a trend. 3 games indicates that's who you really are. So with Michigan having the number 1 rushing attack on the per game basis, how confident are you that they're going to be able to continue to run the ball, maybe not at a 300-yard per game clip, but that effectively once they do get up against teams that are solid in the trenches based off of what you've seen?
Yeah, I'm extremely confident in the reason why is the big fellas up front, the offensive line. Of course, the tight ends will give them the respect because they've been blocking really well and playing really hard and finishing plays. But it's not like we're just breaking off. Of course, we have the explosive plays where you're getting some of the bigger runs, but you're not getting 300 yards with 250 of it being 4 or 5 big runs. There's also the steady ground and pound of, the 4, 5, 6 yard runs, or you see a run that it doesn't look like there's much there, but our running backs are hitting the hole hard and pushing the pile. What might have been a 1 or 2 yard carry is turning into a 5 or 6 yard carry. And it's just kind of punishing classic ground and pound football. And of course, like I said, the offensive line, we talked about this early in the season. They look big, they look strong. The double teams are, that's really where you need to create your movement. The one-on-one battles, you can live with the stalemate as long as you're not getting knocked back. But when you have 600 pounds on 300 pounds, you need to create movement. You need to get up to the second level on the linebackers and punish the smaller linebackers. And that's what you're seeing. So, our running backs have all the talent in the world, but the fact that the O-line are creating such good holes and covering guys up, it's going to make their job easy. And of course, that's something that as long as they're doing it against the better opponents, we're going to see an explosive rushing attack the rest of the season for the University of Michigan.
You mentioned those downfield blocks. We saw that on which I didn't see it in person really, because I was coming out of the tunnel at halftime. I was getting out a little bit late and walking down. I see Michigan's about to run a play. I see JJ McCarthy under center. They snap the ball, and I'm coming out of the tunnel, and all I see is Blake Corum streaking down the left side of the field. But that was also made possible by a downfield block that was made by Ryan Hayes, and even further down the field by tight end Luke Schoonmaker. You're seeing that, and Harbaugh talked about that today, about these guys are, especially the linemen, they're making blocks 20, 30, 40, 50 yards downfield. And that's really making all of the difference when it comes to what this run game's been able to do. What go ahead.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I wanted to just touch on that because I've been around a lot of different coaches and a lot of different philosophies, a lot of offensive coordinators, and everybody preaches it. Everybody says we need all 11 guys blocking it. But it's it's a lot. Everyone preaches it, but you don't always see that from your receivers. Do you have receivers that just want to go catch the ball, or if it's quarters coverage and those safeties are sitting at 10, 8, 9, 10 yards, and their eyes are in the backfield, and your receiver flexed out left, can you dart like a heat-seeking missile and go in there and punish a safety and set the tone? That's a whole different story than, sitting there in the off season and talk about it in the meeting room. And it kind of speaks on, again, we could talk about analytics, but those are the things that don't necessarily show up in the stats and the data. But it speaks about an attitude and a respect for the game and a belief in one another that, hey, listen, like every little block counts. Without those, receivers and downfield blocks, what could only be a 10, 12 yard gain, that ends up being a touchdown. And that shows that this team they're not taking anything for granted. They're not taking a single play off or a rep off. They believe that any play can be a touchdown, and they're going to strain through the whistle to finish each play. And of course, we've seen it time and time again now with explosive plays that are turning into touchdowns and really take the air out of a defense.
Now, obviously, we also saw the passing game had the big downfield play to Cornelius for the touchdown. A couple more deeper shots. Cade McNamara looking a lot more like he did in week 1 than he did in week 2. Was asked to pretty much do the same thing. Week 1 went 9 for 11. This week went 8 for 11. I don't remember the yardage stat. It's in the 190s ish. So he had a little bit more when it came to the yardage is concerned than he did in week one. JJ, same exact performance as far as stats and the attempts and completions, 4 of 6, but a little bit less when it came to the yardage because he didn't have that big long cross-field throw touchdown like he did in week one. What was your impression of the passing game? Again, didn't show a ton, but did a little bit more, did exactly essentially what it did in week one. So what do you feel? Because I know we were going into this wondering if we were going to see just a bit more as far as that was concerned.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we didn't dig too deep into our playbook, obviously, but 9 of 11 by Cade. That's about all you can ask for. He hasn't thrown an interception in his entire career, and we'll get to the defense later, but the defense is playing really damn good football right now, and I think they're gonna carry that throughout the season. We're gonna be holding opponents to low scoring clips, so that's why I love a guy like Cade for this offense, who's not going to go out there and make the big mistake. And in fact, he's rarely going to make any mistakes at all. He's just going to steadily command the offense, put together long drives. That double move, it was a double move down the sideline, like almost like a comeback and go by Cornelius. Great executed route. He showed the eyes, got the defender to bite, and then Cade on time. Of course, you got a safety in the middle of the field, so you don't want to lead your receiver to the safety. But you obviously don't want to lead him too close to the sideline where it's only a 50-yard play and he's falling out of bounds. Cade just kind of throws the ball out there. I think he throws a really, really catchable ball, just a tight spiral. Got good pace to it, but it's not firing in there too hard. And it's just kind of, we call it being served on a Petri dish. You just look back for the ball and the ball's right there for you. It sits in your hands and it's a touchdown. So again, the pass game looked great, but it's nothing to get too excited about yet. I think they did exactly what they needed to do this week. And we're going to, again, hopefully a little bit more this week against Rutgers, continue to build on that and continue to find out who's our guys. Eric All got involved a little bit. I like that. The way we've been running the ball, to have a play action game, especially with the tight ends, getting them involved, is going to be critical for us throughout the season.
It definitely feels like they're keeping some things in the bag. I mean, if you're running for, like, they ran for almost 400 yards this particular game, I believe it was 373 yards total. I understand you want to get those reps. They got, I think, enough. They said it was the game plan to throw a bit more, throw downfield a bit more, get Cade and his receivers a little bit more in rhythm when it comes to that. And, but you don't have to empty the bag. And I'm curious to see at what point, because I feel like Michigan does have that in its capability to throw the ball. I mean, we saw Cade do it ad nauseum against the very opponent that they're playing this week in Rutgers. So I'm not terribly concerned except for not having Ronnie Bell, but it was good to see that Cornelius Johnson ended up being a guy, the guy in this game. I mean, I liked the throw to Dalen Baldwin. And I think you're going to see him involved a lot more. And the player I want to see more of is AJ Henning, because while we saw him being absolutely electric on special teams, not getting as many touches on offense, I'm not sure why that is, but Roman Wilson certainly getting his opportunity. But let's before we move on to defense, special teams looked a lot like it did in week one, where it just seemed like Michigan obviously not getting a lot of kickoffs because there weren't there wasn't that opportunity, given that NIU wasn't scoring touchdowns or field goals, but makes you kind of feel like a lot better seeing what AJ Henning was able to do with 2 of those returns going for 20 plus yards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's the thing about special teams is you kind of got 3 tiers where it's an important part of the game. It's just a couple plays relative to your offensive and defensive snaps, but it's a very important part of the game where you have one tier where you really worry about your special teams, and that's where your special teams can actually hurt your offense or hurt your defense. It can mess up your field position. It can mess up your momentum, where you wouldn't necessarily trust your special team. Then at a very minimum, what you really expect out of your special teams is to be neutral, where they're not necessarily making huge plays, but they're also not wrecking your game. They're doing their jobs. That kind of felt like what we, week one, we had a really explosive special teams. Week 2, it just kind of felt neutral. Didn't make the big mistake. And then it felt like back to this week, we're seeing some explosive returns, especially in the punt return game. Saw some momentum shifts there. And that's where special teams can really be critical. One thing they always talked about in the stats and the analytics is if you can score a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown, your likelihood of winning a game is, significantly increased. So they're really important when you can, kind of flip the field, with your own punt team. But, if you're catching the punt return and you're getting, 10, 15, 20 yards, that's 2 first downs that your offense doesn't have to, travel to get down the field. So super, super critical, and definitely excited about what I saw last week by the Michigan special teams.
Yeah, definitely had the look of being better. Speaking of being better, defense continues to impress. Yes, they gave up 100 and something yards on in the rushing defense. We saw NIU being able to kind of slowly and steadily move the ball, and obviously a lot of that came on that late drive when really Michigan was playing a lot of players that might be their only opportunity to see the field this year. A lot of guys that were walk-ons and true freshmen. And so really exciting that they got that opportunity. But the pass game, Rocky Lombardi, what he was able to do last year, wasn't able to do it anywhere close this year. 44 yards passing, I believe, was the final stat there. Really impressive by the particularly the secondary. But what was the thing that impressed you most watching the defense continue to show you something that they didn't show you last year?
It's what I'm seeing this year and versus what I, didn't see last year. And it's not necessarily one thing. The level of play has just been raised across across the entire board. It's just good, sound 11-man defense. Guys are flying to the ball. That's what you really want to see is how many hats are you getting to the ball? You don't just want to see one guy making a tackle. Do you have all 11 guys flying over there trying to get a piece of the ball carrier? And I think that's what you see. The secondary looked good. We continue to be able to generate pressure, especially a guy like Aiden Hutchinson. He's an absolute beast, should be a first rounder when it's all said and done this year. He continues to just wreck games, and, teams are going to have to account 2 or 3 guys to him. You're probably going to have a tight end get involved to chip, which is one less guy, in the pass concepts, or a running back, and that can really stress an offense, especially as you're game planning throughout the week, to have to account for a guy like that. So I'm just seeing a unit that's working together. They're flying around, and the belief in one another and their belief in the defensive coordinator and their position coaches is really starting to show up on the field. They're playing really good football.
Yeah, it's one of the things I used to say back when you were playing. There was when PA announcer Carl Grappentine would talk when he would announce the play, what happened. It would always be, and this is my Carl Grappentine impression. It's not going to be good because I'm not warmed up on it, but it's used to always sound like a Saturday Night Live roll call, right? It used to be like Trace McSorley is sacked by Chris Wormley, Jordan Lewis, Channing Stribling, Jabril Pepper. It sounded like he was going through all the names of a cast, and it felt like you were getting that again this week, and even more so than the previous 2 weeks. So I think that you're starting to see that work now. The only thing that I have a question about, as far as the pass rush, like you said, that if you're chipping with a tight end or a running back, and you're trying to give extra attention to Aiden. That obviously takes some guys out of the offense, but NIU certainly had a game plan of let's get rid of the ball as fast as humanly possible. They really weren't throwing downfield, even though that's how Rocky Lombardi beat Michigan last year. Didn't really have the chance to really take any deep shots. So I would imagine that's going to be part of the game plan for a lot of teams moving forward to try to neutralize Aiden Hutchinson in particular. So what are your thoughts as far as that's concerned? Does that concern you at all when it comes to what you're going to see down the line, in the sense of if Aiden's somewhat neutralized by the quick pass game and you don't have him getting to the quarterback, do you think that makes things a little bit more difficult for the Michigan defense?
No, and no, I'm really not too concerned about that because as an offense, if you're just throwing, 5, 6 yard passes down the field, that's going to lead you're going to need 10, 11, 12 plays. With the way we've been tackling, if we weren't tackling as good as we are right now, I'd be a little bit concerned, but the open field tackling is pretty good. Guys are seeming to read the quarterback's eyes well. We were able to generate some turnovers. Looked like we had even a couple more opportunities, but again, there's a little thing about college football, where the hashes are really, really wide. So what I'm seeing is, we're giving up throws to the wide side of the field. So when Northern Illinois is on the left hash, your cornerback to the boundary is going to be in press coverage a little bit tighter to the line. And that's good. That's important. And then we're going to be playing off, a little bit further back, a little bit softer coverage to the field. So if you're throwing a 5-yard hitch to the field from the left hash, that's a 30, the field's 50 yards wide. That's going to be a 30, 40-yard pass just to get 5 yards. We can live with that. Those are not going to be accurate. Those are not going to be, easy completions for an offense to have. So, it's the old bend but don't break philosophy. And we have the talent enough where, if you're going a 10, 11 play drive trying to dink and dunk with quick passes down the field, eventually you're going to make a mistake and either turn the ball over, or drop a pass, or get behind the sticks with a couple batted passes, and that's going to put a lot of stress on the offense. So I'm seeing nothing but good things from the Michigan defense right now. That seems to be the formula when you look at Michigan's history for the past few decades is having a dominant defense. And another thing is it looks like these guys look like NFL players. They look big, they look strong, they look dominant. When you break the huddle as an offense and you go and you look at that defensive line, that there is a certain level of an intimidation factor. My senior year, you got freaking Chris Wormley, Taco Charlton, Ben Gideon, Matt Godin, Ryan Glasgow. Coming off the bench, you had Rashawn Gary, Chase Winovich. I mean, these guys are NFL dudes, and I'm seeing the similar builds this year from this Michigan defense front seven. So super excited, man. They got a lot of talent and they're playing together and gelling as a unit, which is really exciting to see.
Definitely felt like it did get away from that. And I remember very specifically, I'm sure you had a similar thought because I think back to that 2016 Penn State game. And I remember I was walking up the tunnel before the game, and I saw some Penn State guys coming out down the tunnel in uniform. And well before the game, it was pregame warmups. And at first I was like, oh, here come the specialists. And then they kept coming and they kept coming. And I was just looking at how much smaller they were than you guys. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, they are going to get absolutely killed in this game. And 49 points to 10 that later it was pretty evident. But
do you remember my senior year is we started off the game, the first 5 or 6 games, we knocked out every single team's starting quarterback. And then I think we knocked out a team's backup too. So in our first 6 games, we knocked out, I think 7 or 8 quarterbacks. It was nuts, just absolutely dominant and imposing their will. And again, you look at this Michigan defenses, they're not just tackling, they're hitting. You can hear it. You can feel it when you see it. And I know the opposing offenses definitely feel it too. So it's that's a sign of a dominant defense, and it's fun to watch too.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. Plus the offense back in 2016, it was those games were over by halftime, pretty much.
Glory days, man. Yeah.
That's what it feels like getting back to right now, right? The Washington game wasn't over at halftime necessarily when you look at the score, but I mean, it certainly felt like it still, even though I think it was 10-3 at that point. Yeah. It still felt like that game was over. And this is, I feel like, as good as the 2018 team ended up being, especially compared to a lot of the expectations, I feel like this team has got a lot of similarities to that 2016 team. I feel like we're seeing, like you had said you wanted to see in the preseason, that killer instinct. And I feel like we'll see more now that we get into Big Ten play, but it'll be interesting. I think this Rutgers game is going to be a much bigger test than people think, because Rutgers is certainly vastly improved. We saw what happened last year in that game. It was triple overtime. Lord knows I remember, kind of, because I was there in Piscataway well after midnight just like, get me out of here. But I feel like you're seeing a confident group of guys that just knows they can put away a team in kind of quick succession. Jake, I think we did a pretty good job of covering the game. I feel like we could talk more, but at the same time, we gotta keep this one a little bit under wraps here. We've got the Big Ten season about to open up, and we'll really kind of find out what Michigan is all about. Before we do, Jake, who would you say is your player of the game? If you've thought about that, I know I wanted to make that a segment at the beginning of the year, didn't do it last week. And who would be your players of the game? I'll let you do one offense, one defense.
It's hard to pick on one offense, but I would collectively as a group, the offensive line. I would say the offensive line just continue to impress. Just what they've been able to do up front. Defensively, I don't know, Isaiah, what do you think? Who would be your player of the game? It was a great unit performance overall, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I think it's I put you on the spot there because it is difficult to pick one guy. Jamon Green, the interception, and I think that he had, like Jim Harbaugh said, he had his best game, and I think it was close to being his best game. I still don't know if it's possible to have a better game than he had against Penn State last year.
Yeah.
Also, like Daxton Hill, I felt like Rocky Lombardi for some reason was targeting him in the slot, and it just seemed like a huge mistake. And then Aiden was still getting really close to getting home. So I think I'll give 3 on that side.
Yeah.
Those two guys impressed me.
Aiden's always an easy choice just because of how dominant he is. Javon getting the interception and then returning it back and almost had him a pick 6. I'd give him the nod this week too.
Well,
one more thing. Do we want to preview the butt dial?
Yeah, you can. I'll let you handle that. Okay.
So, going forward on these shows, starting this Friday, maybe we'll do a Friday and Monday bagger, but going forward, Isaiah and I talked, we want to start a little segment called the butt dial. So reach out to me on Twitter, tag Isaiah in it. We're going to pick a handful of questions, maybe 3 to 5 questions each week. It can be about anything, general life, Michigan football this season, about my career at Michigan or the NFL, but just a good way to get some fan engagement and for you guys to have an opportunity to connect with me and ask me some questions. So we're going to call it the butt dial. We'll have a little segment for it this Friday. So you have till Friday to get the questions in, but we're super excited about it. And it's always a great opportunity to connect with Michigan fans.
I'll make sure that I promote that on Twitter. We'll probably do #buttdial, and
Perfect.
That way people will know they can do that. And we'll start it this Friday for the Locked On Wolverines preview show. And like you said, 3 to 5 questions, all depending on how much time that we have, depending on the show. But you get to ask Jake Butt a question and get involved. So very excited to do that. But that'll wrap up today's X's and O's. We'll be back next week with that. Obviously, Friday we'll have the preview show as we preview Michigan versus Rutgers. Big Ten season starts in earnest. Very excited to see what this team really is made of. We'll really find that out here coming up soon. Jake, thanks for coming on as always. We will talk to you soon. So thanks for watching.